Hello and welcome to today's Webinar Wednesday. We are going to get started in just a moment. I see folks are starting to get settled. So thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar, Aloha Quality with the standards implementation of the Hawaiʻi network. So I am Julie Matusik and I'll be moderating today. I will be introducing our fabulous presenters in just a few minutes. So very excited to do so. A couple logistics items in the meantime. If you are joining from online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. If you have joined via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. And for those of you that are online, you'll see here in just a moment that there is going to be a link to a Dropbox folder that has handouts in the chat. So we'll be referencing some of those throughout the presentation. Others are there for you for just for your reference. And we also want to invite you to put any questions that you may have into the Q&A section of a Zoom webinar. So you'll see that there's a different icon on my screen. It's right to the right of the chat box. So the chat box is open for you to include any comments throughout the webinar, and you also can chat directly with our tech support that is here today. Her name is showing up as Webinar NFSN if you have any tech related questions for her. But all other content related questions, please put in the Q&A section. If you do have those tech issues, we have tech support here. And we will try to get to all of the questions at the end of the webinar. And if we are unable to, for some reason, someone from the NFSN or the Hawaiʻi network will follow up after the webinar. Also want to share too that today's PowerPoint, as well as the handouts and a recording of this webinar, will be available by this time tomorrow on the NFSN website on the Webinar Wednesday page tomorrow afternoon. And last thing to mention that when you exit the webinar today, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. And we ask that you take a moment to complete that, as it really helps us to provide valuable feedback to inform future webinars. And we're actually working on content right now for 2024. So it's perfect timing to provide any feedback you may have. So we would love to get an idea of who is here with us today. So take a look at this map on the screen, and we are going to launch a poll. You'll see we've divided the nation into regions and also put the US territories in as well. So let us know which region of the United States you're in, or if you're joining from outside of the States, of course, we have Canada and other international as an option. We'll give you just a few seconds to let us know where you are joining us from. All righty, let's take a peek at those results. Okay, well, the West is representing today. That is so exciting. We also have representation from the Northeast and the South as well. Great. Well, thank you all so much for responding to that poll. We have just two other polls just to get a sense of who is here with us today, since we can't go around the room and introduce ourselves. This next one is about affiliation. So it's going to pop up and ask which type of organization you're affiliated with. So maybe a family resource center or family resource center network, or another type of family support program, or if you're a parent leader, or in education or early care and education. You have a couple options for government, or if you're a private funder. All right, take just another moment. All right. All right, great diversity here with affiliations. So we have FRCs, FRC networks, other family support programs, education, child welfare, government, and other as well. Great. So thank you all so much for responding to that. And our last question that we have for you is about the level that you work at. So going to launch that here in just a second. So here we're asking, maybe you have an opportunity to work directly at the program level, working directly with families. Maybe you're in the management level, or maybe you're working at the policy or systems level. And of course, we have that other there, our catch-all, just in case. So let us know which level you are working at. All right, last call for responses and take a peek at those results. Okay, really great diversity here. So we have all levels represented. Our strongest representation is from the program and direct service level. Good. That's really helpful to know. That is helpful for us as presenters. We believe you all will find this valuable to inform your work. Okay, thanks again for letting us know a little bit about yourselves. So want to start off with just a bit of context setting, a little background information for you, and want to share first just about the National Family Support Network, just in case you're not familiar with us. So we were founded in 2011 by 8 states. This map only had 8 states at the time that were green. And since then, we have more than quadrupled in size and now have 40 member networks that represent more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million people annually. So it's really exciting to see this map grow. Some of our newest members are Nebraska and Wyoming. And the mission of the National Family Support Network is to promote positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And our vision, in short, is that all of that map would be green, ensuring that all families have access to quality family support programs in their own communities that are provided by FRCs and supported by strong networks. So if you are in a state that is not yet green on the map, we would love to connect with you. Here is, you can see the areas of work of the National Family Support Network, and just cover these at a high level for you for context. But the first is connecting and convening member networks in order to enhance their effectiveness. So we want to increase their connectedness amongst our members for peer learning and for mutual support. And the second area of work is promoting family support best practice and evaluation. So raising awareness of what quality family support is and promoting a common language, standards, and evaluation of it through the national implementation of the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And our third area of work is raising the visibility of the value and the impact of family strengthening and support networks in order to strengthen and increase support for families. So a little bit of background information there for you. Want to share this is a very high level overview of what we'll have an opportunity to talk about today. I'm going to share a little bit more contextual information about the standards of quality, and then I'm very excited to introduce to you our presenters from the Hawaiʻi Network. And then we'll have space for question and answer. So as you are thinking of any questions, please open that Q&A box and put those right in there. And we will take questions at the end. We'll also share some resources and opportunities that are available to you through the national network. And we'll close with that evaluation that will pop up at the end. So let's dive right in. So talking about the standards of quality, for those of you that may be less familiar with them, just want to share a bit of context that these standards are designed to be used by everyone. So public departments, foundations, community-based organizations, and families. So as a tool for planning, providing, and assessing quality practice. And These standards, they uniquely integrate and operationalize two frameworks from our field. You may be familiar with these already, maybe not, but one of the frameworks is the Principles of Family Support Practice, and the Strengthening Families approach in its evidence-based, research-based, evidence-informed 5 protective factors. So those are the two frameworks that the standards are based upon. And just a couple key things to call out about the standards. So one is that they create a common language and expectations across different types of programs. So whether you're working in a family resource center, in a home visiting program, child development program, if you're working in education, anywhere in that family support field, it's creating that common language. So we can really talk and have clear communication when we think about other fields. So healthcare, education, they have standards, and they have a way to speak, to be able to talk about quality work in their fields. And so this is the very first framework to do so in our family support field. So very excited to share that with you. They also help ensure that families are supported and strengthened through quality practice. And important to mention that we are not trying to sell the standards. They are available along with all of the implementation tools for free on the NFSN website. So if you haven't downloaded those yet, be sure to do so. And we also in 2021, it's an exciting next step that we took with these standards, is that the standards were revised with a particular eye on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as relevance for both Canadian and US context. So they underwent a comprehensive process, and had members from across the country and outside of the country that were part of that process. And the standards have 5 core areas of practice. And you can see those here on the screen. So the 5 core areas of practice are family centeredness, family strengthening, diversity, equity, and inclusion, community strengthening, and evaluation. So throughout the standards, all of the different standards fall under each one of these buckets. And each of these represents a key element of quality practice with families. And the last thing I want to share with you before I introduce our exciting presenters is this tool. So we actually have 2 implementation continua on our website. So if you go to nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org and hover over standards, if you click to overview, that is where you'll download the standards if you haven't done that yet, just to share that real quick. And then if you drop down to standards implementation, that's where you'll be able to find all of the implementation tools, including these. There's a network one and a program one. These are also in your handout section in the Dropbox link as well. So this one in particular, sharing this here because we're hearing from a network and their story. But this has the sample steps across the top as networks are implementing the standards into their networks. And then there's sample activities and the resources available to networks as they are continuing on this journey. So the resources that are available to you through the national network, and then the potential cost associated with each of those. So just want to share this for context. I know it's a little bit hard to read on the screen, but encourage you to download it from the handout section or the website, just to have as context. It serves as a bit of a roadmap, and I know our presenters are going to be referencing it a bit on as they talk through their journey as well. Okay, and so without further ado, I am honored to introduce our guests from the Hawaiʻi Network. We have Kathleen and Kakuna, and I invite them to introduce themselves. Thank you so much for being here.
O nauna ka hala me ka lehua. E halele hua no ia na kano e. O ka uno ia e ano ine e li ane ho'i o ka hiki mai. Hiki mai no o ko a hiki puno me ke aloha. Aloha 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 mai kako, mai Hawaiʻi a i hao a ka aina aloha. First and foremost, we want to mahalo Julie and the NFSN team for inviting us to present today, but maybe more importantly, for guiding us and supporting us on this journey. My name is Kukuno Kala Yoshimoto. I'm the Hawaii Ohana Support Network co-chair and executive director of Blueprint for Change. And again, I'm honored to be here with you today. And I'll let Kat introduce herself.
Aloha. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Kat Odell, and I am the Hawaii Ohana Support Network coordinator, and I also teach in Human Development and Family Studies at the University of Hawaii and Windward Community College. Very happy to be here with you today.
Thanks, Kat. We're here today to share with you folks a small part of our journey as a network and how utilizing the standards has helped our network with quality assurance, training and technical assistance, capacity building, and something very close on the horizon, membership expectations. Next slide. Before we begin, we humbly offer this land acknowledgement of Hawaii as an indigenous space whose original people are Kanaka Maoli. The aina or land from which we join you stretches from the mountaintops of Pu'uwai on Ni'ihau to the shores of Puna on Hawaii Island. We also want to take the time here to acknowledge the indigenous lands from which each of you joins us and the original people of those lands. Today, we gather wisdom and inspiration from our kupuna or our elders to our keiki or our children to share with you all in this space. Next slide. I'd like to start with a bit of information that'll provide some context and framing for our journey. So historically, Native Hawaiians or Kanaka Maoli thrived through the generations. Native Hawaiians today are descendants of Polynesian wayfinders who for thousands of years traversed vast oceans using sophisticated navigation systems, which eventually landed them in one of the most remote chain of islands in the world, Hawaii. Native Hawaiians lived for many years isolated from the rest of the world with viable culture that met the needs of a thriving, industrious, and spiritual people. The word ohana is one example that shows the deep interconnected relationship Native Hawaiians have with the land and with each other. Oha, as you see boxed there in red, means to sprout or a sprout or offshoots of the taro plant, which furnish the staple of Native Hawaiian life. With the suffix na added to it, ohana literally means offshoots or that which is composed of offshoots. This term then, as employed to signify the family, has precisely the meaning the offshoots of a family stock. Kinship in Hawaii extends far beyond the immediate biological family. The terminology of kinship is thought of against the background of the whole community of kith and kin, including in-law and adoptive categories. Next slide. In the 1,000 years that ensued, Native Hawaiian descendants of those migrations built a thriving, sophisticated culture and a complex subsistence economy based on values of trust, shared responsibilities, and communal participation. The ohana or family still exists as a vital factor in Hawaiian life. Most Hawaiians nowadays adhere in some degree to both the old Hawaiian system and the American way. Modified and adapted due to urbanism, education, economic life, individualism, and intermarriage with other races, is it desirable that it be perpetuated as a social institution and force? If desirable, can it be perpetuated where it still prevails? And can it be revived where it has lapsed? We continue our efforts and commitment to diversity, ethnic understanding, and cultural awareness of all the families of Hawaii to be responsive and inclusive of the diverse needs of the community, while honoring the values, practices, and principles of the host culture, Native Hawaiians. Next slide. Mahalo for hanging in there. Thank you for hanging in there with us while we help to provide some context. While our presentation today definitely will speak to the points I mentioned earlier, perhaps more importantly, you'll see that a lot of it is also woven right into our approach. For example, we opened with a traditional oli or chant to welcome you all to the space, followed by an acknowledgement of the indigenous lands and people where we are from, as well as those in your areas, which of course touches on Section 3 of the standards, DEI. With that said, let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll start with a brief overview of the Hawaii Ohana Support Network, how we built the foundation, some key activities that helped us gain momentum and where we are now. We'll move into talking about how we as a network implement the standards, followed by cultural connections, and last but not least, next steps and lessons learned. Next slide. All right, so we'll start with creating a network. And before we jump into that, I did want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the Hawaii Ohana Support Network logo. The images we chose to represent the Hawaii Ohana Support Network logo includes a kalo or taro leaf for reasons mentioned previously, as well as the three abstract type images of people joined together. This we felt was a direct representation of our network, who we are at our core, and the relationships and partnerships we built, developed, and honor throughout our journey. Next slide. The next three slides, I'm going to cover three core values that we really, I think, kept at the forefront of our minds as we started to develop this network. And the first is pilina, defined as association, relationship, union, connection, meeting, joining, adhering, fitting. Here in Hawaii, relationships are so very important, as I'm sure they are in your community. The Native Hawaiian worldview puts a strong emphasis on relationships, relationships with each other, relationships with the natural environment, and relationships with spirituality. This core value has been our North Star and has helped us navigate at times rough seas that were unforeseen and unpredictable. We felt it was important to highlight this core value because we believe it is one of the most important values we hold close in all personal and professional spaces and is what helped us to move through the process fairly quickly. Next slide. Ho'okahi mana'o. The second core value is ho'okahi mana'o, or a shared understanding. This is another significant core value that helped to ensure the work moves steadily forward. A shared understanding is not always easy to accomplish, and one of the key tools we use to get us there is the standards. As you all know, the standards give us a common language, tools, and approaches to quality family support, which not only includes direct service, but all the behind-the-scenes type work to ensure the culture of the program or organization at its core is reflective of that quality support. Next slide. The third core value is ohana, or family, relative, or kin group. We shared a little bit about the genesis of the word ohana and how deeply rooted it is in the Native Hawaiian worldview. We've kept that same reverence for the term ohana, and acknowledged the importance of keeping families at the center of our work. I threw in a question here just to see if folks would participate. Does anyone know which of the 5 standards this hits? Ohana. Not a trick question, I promise. It's keyword is center.
Feel free to put your answer in the chat.
Sorry, do like curveball there. I forgot I added a question in there.
I love it. I love it.
I'll give you a few seconds and then yes, Tess, family centeredness. Exactly. Mahalo. Thank you for participating. You can go to the next slide, Julie. So when this work began, we immediately saw the connections when we first again started the work with NFSN and FRCs. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we put a call out and engaged with people and programs who've been doing Family Resource Center type work, perhaps not under that name. So Blueprint for Change was one of these examples. Blueprint for Change believes that communities we serve hold many of the solutions we seek when addressing the needs of children and families. And it's for this reason that we are committed to joining together with these caring communities to put the well-being of families and children first. We are a 501c3 nonprofit whose genesis began way back in the early 90s when Hawaii was ranked among the highest in the nation for child abuse and neglect, and actually held the 3rd highest rate of children in foster care at 40%. These statistics prompted what we refer to as the Child Welfare Services Revolution. In 1994, the Child Welfare Services Reform Task Force was created, whose hard work and dedication led to the birth of Blueprint for Change, which was created to support the innovative service delivery model known as Neighborhood Places. Next slide. At its core, Neighborhood Place is a community-driven walk-in center, what would be considered a community-based family resource center, that provides the general public access to an array of family services designed and created to reflect the specific needs of their respective communities. Blueprint for Change currently oversees a system of 7 neighborhood places across the state of Hawaii. As you can see here, 2 on the island of Kauai, 2 on Oahu, 1 on Maui, and 2 on Hawaii Island. Next slide. Our vision that every child grows up in a loving family and nurturing home and a safe environment is what drives and motivates our work. Our mission to develop and support community-driven services that promote the safety and well-being of children and families guides our every move on this journey towards reaching our vision. Our paramount goal is that each family, secure in the knowledge that is accepted and valued in our community, will maximize its potential for ensuring the optimal growth optimal growth and development of its children. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Kukuna. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we started our network and how this ties into our standards implementation, because that's what we started as the foundation for our network was the standards and having that shared understanding and the importance of having that before we moved forward. Next slide. These are all of our partners. So when we first came together back in 2020, and we are still an emerging network, by the way, so we are still one of the newbies in all of this work. In 2020, I helped to start 4 school-based family resource centers, and then started putting that word out and started to talk and got together with Blueprint for Change and the neighborhood places, and then brought together all of these other folks, including DOE, who I worked for at the time, Department of Education, the Department of Health, and the Department of Human Services in Hawaii, and multiple nonprofit organizations, including the ones that you see here on the screen. It was particularly important that we had partners who did the work within Indigenous culture. That would be Kamehameha Kalani Trust. We wanted to make sure that the work was grounded in the Indigenous culture of the place, in Hawaiian culture. And so we purposely sought out and partnered with folks who wanted to do this, could help to keep us grounded in the values and the beliefs of this place. Next slide. So our mission is to promote pono outcomes for all keiki, or opio, youth, ohana, families, and kai'aulu communities by leveraging the collective impact of family resource centers and family strengthening programs, and by encouraging quality family support and strengthening practices. So you can see as I read through this how closely aligned it was to what Blueprint for Change was already doing around their mission and vision. Next slide. Our vision is to cultivate growth by planting seeds of aloha, ono, righteousness, for every child, youth, family, and community. Next slide. This is our Family Resource Center network that we worked out. So when we first came together, we started those 4 family resource centers, and since then we've been expanding and continue to talk to multiple organizations and schools who are interested in having FRCs themselves. So what we talk about with them is, first, step 1, the readiness. Is the leadership or the administration on board? Is there someone who can staff a family resource center? And do you have space? Now, these seem simple. However, our schools can be overcrowded. The space can be very limited. And we do have to really rethink sometimes and think outside of the box about where our family resources might be located, especially on school campuses. As for our FRC staff, that can be a tricky one as well. Back at the time when Kukuna was talking about neighborhood places and community-based family resource centers starting in the 90s, our Department of Education had parent community networking centers in all of our schools, and that was state funded. Since then, change of leadership, change of funding, that has turned into parent community networking coordinators, and they don't necessarily have a place on campus, and they are part-time, 17 to 19 hours a week. So FRC staff can also be a challenging one. So that's what we check for first, the readiness. And then the next step for us is always the training and assessment piece, and that's where we turn to the National Family Support Net. And we make sure that our FRC staff, and often also the admin or leadership, is trained in those standards, and that's where they start their work. Then they partner with families and community organizations, as well as our state network, and they build programming based on identified needs of their families, utilizing the 5 family protective factors as the foundation for that work to strengthen families for student support. And then finally, step 5 is to make sure that we're always reflecting, assessing and reflecting on the work that we're doing, and using that reflection and that data to plan as we go along. Next slide. So we actually did a webinar for National Family Support Network a year or two ago, maybe. And this was one of the things that we were taking a look at. And it was nice to bring this up because we could see that there were more check marks than we used to have. So when we were starting with the NFSN self-assessment tool that comes with the standard, we received GEAR grant support to help fund and set up some family resource centers. That was our governor's emergency education relief grant. And we had a graduate student helping us out as a network. But now we're moving on to expanding FRCs across the state. That's where we're at right now. And our expansion is still built on the standards and making sure that we have that shared understanding and we provide that training as a foundation for the new FRCs coming up. And we are still codifying FRCs as an emerging network. Next slide. Around family engagement, we have provided parent advisory committee training now multiple times for our state through National Family Support Network. Our school-based family resource centers now actually have parent advisory committees. So that's been a super exciting development over the past year or two. We did develop a logic model, and we are still now working on assessment and evaluation. What data will we collect, and what data makes sense to collect across school-based and community-based family resource centers? Collect currently can be different. Next slide. So we say it was like riding the wave, because really we got started very quickly. It was 2020, and it was the time of the pandemic. And that's when we got to spend a lot of time on webinars, much like this, because we didn't have to travel to the continent to go to conferences. So I was attending everything the NFSN was putting out and asking lots of questions, and at the same time establishing those 4 family resource centers. And then we got the network together just shortly after that in the fall. And we already were able to host certification trainings on the standards right away that fall. We joined together with Neighborhood Places, and then we were able to become NFSN members as a state. And then we had 7 committee members trained in the standards in Hawaii. We did that because, for several reasons. One, because we like to do it in our time zone. Sometimes trainings and conferences for us can be starting at 5 a.m., but also because it was important to us to bring that relevancy of our place into the trainings. So a lot of times when we have national trainings or national certifications, it seems to not tie into the values of the place of Hawaii. So we really wanted to make sure that we were honoring Hawaii and making it relevant to our participants. So it was important to us that we could do this, so to speak, in-house. So we got trained right away that first year, 7 of us. And then we were also presenting about family resource centers, various state and national venues, and promoting the standards training, not just for FRCs, but for everyone in Hawaii who is working with children and family. Next slide. So that was the first year. And then 21-22, we received that grant funding, which was fantastic. We started to add to our training. So now we were doing our standards training quarterly, and then we started offering our PAC training, Parent Advisory Committee training, biannually. We were part of the National Governor's Child and Family Wellbeing Learning Cohort, and we were awarded technical assistance around our work with family resource centers. That group helped to write together. We wrote the Senate Bill 3111, which we passed, and now we have an FRC office and director. So that was amazing. And then we had our parent advisory committees stood up in our school-based family resource centers and started using that program self-assessment tool in 2020 at the end of the school year to collect data around where the programs were and what their goals might be for the following year. And that program self-assessment tool is something we've been using at least annually since to assess where we are and where we want to go in each of the family resource centers. Next slide. So 2023, this year, we have, because we went so fast, we had to really take a minute, take more than a minute, to think about what are the missing pieces, what more do we have to do to lay down our foundation. So we are now working with Andrew Russo and National Family Support Network on technical assistance for network, and also navigating how we work with our state FRC office. The state FRC office and the funding that they received through that bill allowed us to be a part of what's called One Shared Future, which is an organization that brings folks together to network and problem solve together around a vision or mission. And for us, for that group, it was around family resource centers. So we got an opportunity to network and engage with many nations who wanted to support the work of family resource centers. We've also added 4 new family resource center, school-based, and 1 new community-based family resource center in 2023. In addition, we've upped our game on the training front. Now our trainers, there's several certified offer the 5 protective factors training, as well as parent leadership training. In 2024, we are very much hoping to expand our training opportunity that we have those certifications. We've been able to provide all the trainings for the past 3 years free to participants because we've gotten various grant funding. And we have trained, probably close to 400 folks now in Hawaii on the standards. So that is very much a part of the work that we started doing and doing well from the beginning. And we want to expand on that because so many who take the standards training want even more, honestly. We'd also like to support standards implementation. So we do give the trainings, but we need to work on having a better infrastructure around how we support folks once they have been trained, how we give that ongoing support, and how we create space for that for all of them. We are also working on beginning official membership. We do not have an official membership, nor do we charge dues currently. And that's one of the things that we're working on through technical assistance right now. And then, of course, as I'm sure many other networks who are emerging will say, we would like to secure long-term sustainable funding. The more the work expands, the more folks we need to help us with it. And that comes with funding needs. Next slide. This is some of the grants and fundings that we've received through the past 3 years. And this is what we've used to pay for all the trainings that we have offered, as well as to pay for training coordination, network coordination, and attending some of the conferences as well. So this has been amazing that we've had all these grants and funding, but long term, of course, we would like to build capacity around funding and having that long-term source. Next slide. So now you see this map is the neighborhood community-based family resource centers and our school-based family resource centers. And this is where they're placed throughout our islands now. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll see even more. Next slide. So back to this family resource network development continuum. When you look at this, we've kind of jumped here and there. When we started out, we actually were already doing the trainings from the get-go. Like that was one of the first things we started to do. So we have gone back on a few of these. It's not a linear process for sure. This is, a suggestion of what the continuum looks like, but we were definitely operationalizing early on. Like I said before, we were definitely riding the wave. And I'm going to turn this over to Kukuna. You might want to say something else about this.
I will get there in the next slide, but thank you. Yes, thank you, Kat. Next slide, Julie. All right, here we are at implementation. And so you'll notice, well, I don't know if you noticed, but really we were trying to sprinkle all of this implementation stuff throughout what we've been talking about, the network development, the building foundation. Really what we want to kind of highlight here is that in every space that we did, whether it was building foundation or starting the network or getting folks trained in the training and offering the training, the standards absolutely informed our approach to and work with all of these things. All also with various entities, including funders, community members, and organizations. So when Kat references like doing presentations for folks who are interested in starting FRCs, we always use the standards as a lens whenever we have these opportunities come up. So I just want to mention that there. Next slide, Julie. So let's take a look here again at the network implementation continuum. So this is one that Julie had showed on her portion in the beginning. And we really use this as a roadmap for the development of our network. Keeping the standards, of course, as I mentioned, at the forefront was super helpful in keeping us really focused and on track. I won't spend too much time kind of reading through this. You folks have access to it on the NFSN website. And because Dr. Rodell Cat kind of talked through some of the stuff here. So first, I want to just mahalo the National Family Support Network. Thank you to the National Family Support Network for creating and sharing the FRC Network Development Continuum and this Network Implementation Continuum you all see here. If you're familiar with the former, you'll notice that the standards don't come into play until the operationalized phase. And as Kat mentioned, we kind of did the standards first. So in theory, the next step after you operationalize the network development would be to employ the network implementation continuum, which, as you can see, is heavily focused on the standards, which makes sense, right? I'm not saying that how we did it was right or wrong. I'm really just sharing how it happened organically, naturally, and kind of how it worked out for us. So the network, the Hawaiʻi Ohana Support Network, actually grew from the standards. So as Kat mentioned, she attended many of the National Family Support Network's core webinar Wednesdays, which includes, uncovering America's best kept secret, family resource centers, and family resource center networks, and really was inspired by the work. You all kind of know this part, but then she got folks together to talk about who's doing what related to FRCs. And one of the very first activities of the group was to attend a standard certification training, then followed by the identification of folks who would be interested in becoming trainers in the standards locally here in Hawaii. Okay, so all this to say, first, and again, mahalo to the National Family Support Network for developing and sharing these awesome tools for us to use. And second, to just offer some solace to you folks in the fact that sometimes our journey will take us on a journey that may not look like what we or others expected. The important thing, I think, here is to build and maintain pilina, or relationships, to develop a shared understanding, and always keep families at the forefront of all the work that we do. Hand it back to Kat. Sorry, next slide, and then back to you, Kat.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. So what is our wish list? As we've gone along here, we think ahead all the time, what we'd like to do next, what we want to accomplish. It's a wonderful group of folks that are forward-thinking problem solvers and really are okay with thinking outside the box. I call them the champions, the can-do folks, the folks, this is what needs to be done, let's find a way. So on our wish list, we would definitely like all FRCs to be utilizing the standard self-assessment tool. That would be data that we can then collect as a network across both school and community-based family resource centers. We need to, and we want to do more follow-up with our training participants. We focused heavily on getting the trainings going and getting as many folks trained as possible so that we as a state understand the meaning of quality family engagement and can come together around that. But we definitely would like to offer more follow-up with our training around using the self-assessment tool. Are they using it? How are they using it? Do they need help using it? I know family resource centers, the first year we did that, I sat alongside of them to go through that self-assessment tool. And, I still continue to coach them throughout the year and to work with them at the end of the year. But they are taking on more and more, they're understanding more and more about the self-assessment tool the more they use it, and now are involving their parent advisory committees in assessing as well, which has been wonderful. But we need to have that kind of support for all of our participants if possible. We would also like to create a community of practice so that our training participants can come together on a regular basis to continue those wonderful discussions that they have in our trainings. wonderful things about having the trainings in-house in Hawaii is they get to meet each other, all these other organizations that they didn't know about before that are doing similar work or connected work. And they make wonderful relationships during our training and learn so much and share so much. We'd like to continue holding space for that and guiding that. And then the opportunity for individual coaching as well, because everyone needs a different level of assistance and guidance when it comes to utilizing the standards we found. So we'd like to be able to provide individual coaching for all our current FRCs and all upcoming FRCs as well. We'd like to see parent advisory committees guiding the programming and collaborating in the evaluation of all FRCs. So like I said, we do have the 4 original schools have their PACs up and running, and they're starting to collaborate on that self-assessment tool, but that's something we'd like to see across our FRCs, and the work really being guided by families. So nothing for families without families, kind of an idea. Offering additional trainings to better equip FRC staff to understand and implement the standards and the PAC. So we have seen like through, for example, the 5 family protective factors that offers folks a deeper understanding of the protective factors themselves, which is what the standards are based on. So yes, what trainings can we offer ongoing for those who want more, who want to grow beyond just the initial training? So we've been doing trainings very well. That's one thing that we've done well from the beginning, and that's something that we would like to continue to expand because people are asking for it. It's an identified need. Next slide. So currently, with funding from our state FRC office, we are running basically a pilot program in those 4 rural school-based family resource centers where we're offering monthly one-to-one meetings. And this is something that other networks had suggested to us as good practice. And this is something that neighborhood places are meeting with their family resource center directors, their community-based family resource center directors, but we wanted to make sure that we had that support for school-based as well. Also bringing them together for community of practice. So the school-based family resource centers are getting together once a month, and every time they tell me this is their favorite thing they ever do. Their best time of the month, best meeting, best work is when they're together with each other. Because a lot of times they feel kind of siloed in their work on school campuses. And they just gain so much by sharing with each other what community resources they're utilizing, what are their challenges, what have been their successes. So that's been very beneficial. And then we're also looking at making that self-assessment tool usable throughout the year. So instead of just having going over it at the end of the year, how can we also measure quarterly the progress around the self-assessment tool and the goals that they've identified as a result of their assessment? So we're working on some user-friendly tools to help with that, as well as to help collect data. What data do they need to collect? What data do they want to collect? How can we make this user-friendly for them? So we are working with our family resource center directors to develop these tools. So this is work that is just getting going, but we're hoping very much that this school year will end with having these tools in place and having even more lessons learned about how we might progress with all of this as we expand family resource centers. Next slide. Okay, and I wanted to show you an example of what's going on here in Hawaii. Everybody loves the pictures. This is some evidence of progress. This is Blanche Pope Elementary School, and Blanche Pope Elementary School sits on our one of our Hawaiian homelands. So it is majority Native Hawaiian students there. This is Kapua, and she is part of that community and has children at the school actually, and family resource center director there. And she has really demonstrated how do you really implement these standards, because if you've ever been to a school open house, a lot of times like you go in this cafeteria and you sit there and the principal talks at you, and then you go to the teacher's classroom and the teacher talks at you, and then you leave. She decided to make this, to set the tone for the whole school year about what a family resource center is and also what's available in the community to support the families. So you see there, she's sitting outside of the family resource center, and they had the food pantry open. They're working with Hawaii Food Bank the night of the open house. They were already giving out food and giving a schedule of when they would throughout the year. Next slide. And then here you see her pack. She has a wonderful pack. These are some of the members, the Parent Advisory Committee, and they have just jumped in and been wonderful in helping her to plan and organize all of the things that are going on campus. And they staff the Family Resource Center, volunteers right alongside of her, and it's very much a model of shared power, shared leadership. It's been an amazing results with their pack this year. Next slide. So you see here a food truck. So she brought in a food truck and a shave ice truck, and she also brought in some local musicians to play music, to sing and play music during the open house. So it looked more like a festival than a mandatory school event. Next slide. And here you say, we all kokua, we all help and support. So this is a picture of some of the folks going into the Family Resource Center, community organizations outside of the Family Resource Center, school staff helping to hand things out to the families that they need throughout the year. Next slide. Really shows it takes a village. Here's some of the community partners that showed up that night. And these folks were able to interact with the families in a very casual, relaxed manner. And a lot of the responses from the families where we didn't even services were available. So now that they know when they have a need, there's a one-stop shopping that they can go to the Family Resource Center and talk to Kapua, and she knows how to connect them to these community resources. And they saw firsthand that these community organizations were all in and that they were there to support. Next slide. Concrete supports in times of need, for sure. Here's the food pantry and all the wonderful things that she was offering that night and continues to offer weekly. You see there that lots of books that had been donated were being handed out as well. Next slide. And I'm going to move on to let Kukuna bring us home with cultural connections.
Thanks, Kat. Yeah, so cultural connections that we felt was a very important piece and perhaps a little unique to our network, but definitely not to you folks in your communities. Before we get on to next steps and lessons learned, we want to just very quickly highlight some approaches we use to help us ensure that we're making these cultural connections. Next slide. So how do we weave Hawaiian values into our work to create cultural relevance? First, we have a few in-house trainers that bring the cultural relevant experiences they have into this space and share with us. Second, in-house training provides networking opportunities where folks can meet and talk to and get to know folks who are perhaps more steeped in cultural awareness and bringing that forward than others. The third is adding Aloha. So throughout, as I mentioned, throughout everything we do, along with the three core values I shared earlier, Aloha is definitely a challenging fourth. It's right there too. It should be a part of the top three. But really, I think the three that we mentioned all falls under the term Aloha. And so we always make sure that whatever we do, whether it's a presentation to 1, 2, 3, or 50 people, we always kind of bring the same energy. We always bring the same kind of emotion and feeling and passion to the work that we do. So always keeping Aloha at the forefront of our minds as well, whenever we're interacting or speaking to or with family resource centers or families, everybody under the sun. And the last but not least thing we have here is aligning content. And so this is something that we are working on. So for example, the standard, I have one concrete example I can share. So the standards of quality certification training, there's a slide that talks about when they're talking about the 5 protective factors, it references the California network kind of coming up with these terms that mirror the 5 protective factors. And there's a picture of a palm tree as it's listed in the, which is not wrong. It's not wrong. But so one easy way that we can infuse this culture or the values of Hawaii is changing that term of palm tree to coconut tree, because folks in Hawaii are very familiar with coconut trees and kind of understand the not only the surface level benefits of the coconut, but there's also very deep cultural implications to what that tree means and what it does and what it provides to the community. So little things like that we try to be aware of and acknowledge those things. And so some other areas that we're looking to kind of make more relevant to us here in Hawaii is the photos and videos, video testimonies that are shown on those trainings, that perhaps we can let one of our FRC directors or participants create a video, and we can highlight them in there. So working on that stuff, but yeah, just wanted to give you folks kind of an overview of how we here in Hawaii kind of bring that forward. Next slide. All right, next steps and lessons learned. I can jump to the next slide. So the first is expanding training opportunity. Oh, did I steal your slide, Kat? I think this is yours. Go ahead.
Oh, good, but so next steps. Okay, sure. So expanding this training opportunities, like we talked about, to increase that understanding and ability. We really want families in Hawaii, no matter where they go, whatever school or whatever community they live in, we want them to be able to access quality family engagement and quality resources. And that means beginning with that shared understanding that comes with the standards training. Further developing our network implementation plan. This is something that we are working with Tech Assist with NFSN currently. Begin official membership. That's what we plan to do starting out in 2024. And then implementing more trainings related to the standards. So again, like 5 family protective factors or parent leadership training, these kinds of opportunities we'd like to continue to offer more, because the folks that we've trained already want that. So that's definitely got to be one of our next steps. Next slide.
All right, this one is me. Sorry about that. Jumped the gun there. So moving on to lessons learned. The first you see here is all about pilina. You've heard this word multiple times throughout our presentations here, and we can't say it enough how important the relationships we built were and are continue to be. So do that in your communities and find those champions and yeah, make those relationships strong. The second is keep it moving. We were a volunteer network for many moons, and it really is because of the dedication, passion, and commitment of the core relationships that we built with the people in this work. So we always are committed to keeping it moving regardless of what funding is out there. Kat and I both have done this work for free for many moons, as I mentioned. So just keep it moving. I think that's a key thing for us is that we do. The third is to stay relevant. And so just like we mentioned on that last slide, the next steps is to find other ways to support the folks who are doing the work. And so one way that we stay relevant is to look at what other types of training we can do to offer the community in support of the foundational standards certification. Fourth, find opportunities. We as an Eric, and Kat herself does many presentations to all kinds of people and groups, funders, community members, schools, libraries, everybody under the moon who is interested in it. And so I think we're really good at finding opportunities where we can provide information and support on all kind of different levels. So find those opportunities. The fifth is to be supportive. This work can't be done by one person alone. And so supporting each other within our network, as well as those members, soon to be members and affiliates is very important to us. And so this is a lesson that we hold close and dear and continue to work on. And last but not least, expect those challenges and plan for contingencies. How wonderful the world would be if everything went according to plan. But as we all, I'm sure, are very familiar with, it hardly ever goes that way. So planning for contingencies will definitely help in the pivot, right? If something happens not according to plan, you have a plan in place that you can quickly and hopefully effortlessly pivot into another area that you can plan for ahead. So these are just in short a few of our lessons learned in implementing the standards in our network. Thank you.
Okay, and I think at this point we are open to questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kat, and so much Kakuna. It was such an informative presentation. Just all of your lessons learned just are so valuable to other networks to be able to learn from. So thank you all so much for sharing that. And um, now is the time to enter in questions, and we'll pause here real quick. In lieu of putting up Kat and Kakuna's contact information, there's an email here for their network, and Catherine's also going to drop in the chat the link to their website, so you can access that as well directly. And of course, the beautiful QR code here is for you to scan also. So just want to pause there for a moment, and feel free to be going ahead and opening the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar platform and entering in any questions that you may have for Kat and Kakuna. And while you are entering in your questions, I'm just going to share a couple of things real quick while you're brainstorming, just resources and opportunities available to you through the NFSN. So one is our upcoming webinar Wednesdays. So we regularly schedule webinars throughout each month, highlighting different networks and work on the standards. And Kat and Kakuna had referenced a couple other webinars that you may also find very valuable if you haven't participated in those yet. So in addition to these live webinars, there's also an archive of recordings as well. So be sure to access those. Of course, they're always free, and the library is there so you can access those. And just want to share too, I know Kat and Kakuna shared how foundational offering the training has been in their state, and just how important that was. So I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already participated in the training, to do so. If you go to the NFSN website and go to the certification training page, you can see if your state has a network that is currently offering standards trainings. So it'll have contact information there, so you can register directly for a training offered within your state. So if you do have trainings offered in your state, definitely go that route. And we know some states don't yet. And so that's why we offer these open certification trainings, and invite everyone who does not have a connection to a state network to be able to have access to this training still. So these are open certification trainings that you can register for online. They're held virtually, so you can register for those also. And they have been filling up very quickly lately. So just putting a plug in there for being the early bird there, if you're interested in that. Another training that I just want to share with you as an opportunity and a tool stuck in your tool belt is the Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. So this is, I know, a training that the Hawaiʻi Network has utilized, and one that we see as having been very helpful to many networks and many programs. So this is for programs that are looking to start parent advisory committees, or else wanting to strengthen existing ones. And it's co-trained by an NFSN team member, as well as a national parent leader. So encourage you to check that out if you're interested. Again, these are open trainings and virtual. I'll toss my contact information up here, but let's take some questions.
I see two in the question and answer. Maybe I'll take
Yeah,
the first one, and Kakuna, maybe you can think on the second.
yeah. So the first question is, how are you collecting and using the data from those self-assessments?
So
Kat,
Gail,
before you start, can I just provide a little bit of context? So one of the things that the network is working on kind of clearing up is the relationship between community-based family resource centers and school-based family resource centers, mainly because the school-based family resource centers fall under the Department of Education, which is a whole system in and of itself, whereas community-based family resource centers are a little bit more community-based and flexible, and are able to do a little bit different things differently. So Kat will speak to the pilot project that she mentioned earlier through the FRC state office that we have, which really is allowing her to develop a few tools that she can use. Hopefully we can use across, all FRCs to do just that. So sorry for interrupting, and I'll give it back to you, Kat. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So yes, I'll speak to the pilot. So we started using self-assessment tools a couple years ago, actually. And so what has that data been used for? First of all, the schools utilize the data collected for their academic plans and their comprehensive needs assessments. So that helps them to understand what role family engagement is in student success, and to think about what kind of goals they have that they might work with the Family Resource Center around. We did compare the data for each FRC from year to year and graphed that out. And then we also compared across the complex, which is what we call, basically a district. Hawaii is one giant school district, the whole state, and broken into complexes, which are like what you would district on the continent. So then we looked across the complex to see, and one of the trends was are all saying they would like more parent leadership, working on the PAC and parent leadership specifically. So that's one of the things that helped inform us about kind of we needed to be able to offer, and guided us towards getting some training around that. So yes, this are utilizing the data, and we are also as a network utilizing the data, see what kind of support we need to provide individually, also across the group. Does that help?
Thanks so much, Kat. Yeah, that's great. And are there any suggestions on better outreach to many of the Hawaiian families that have moved out of Hawaii because of the cost of living?
I'm going to follow that question with a question, or with two questions. So my first question is, by outreach, do you mean outreach to engage them in Family Resource Center services? And then my second question is are you in Hawaii, or are you in California, or are you in Nevada?
Okay.
California.
That assumption is interesting.
Okay, so I would say if you're looking to engage them in participating in Family Resource Center type activities or things, I mean, speaking as a Hawaiian, I'm usually attracted to specific types of event. Oftentimes they include food or music or things like that. I know they have, like, Aloha festivals and things like that where it kind of draws that crowd. That's one way, I think, to kind of do some outreach informally there. Another way, if you're a part of a family support or serving program or organization, I feel like you have a platform, so to speak, to kind of figure out how best to do that in your community, whether that be through schools, because most kids, go to schools, and so that's one place I think families can be reached. I think another way is looking at, the NFSN always highlights the KC Family Programs opportunity maps, and so that kind of really shows, maybe not in the greatest of detail, but it does show where there are pockets of Hawaiians living. And so maybe, using the map as a way to kind of just identify these, I'm just going to call them hotspot areas, and then taking it a step further, looking into those communities to see what types of family programs and organizations are already in those communities, and then maybe networking or building relationships with them to see how you guys can support each other or collaborate in those ways. Across state lines, I think similar process that you could see where there are high density or populations of Native Hawaiians, say in Nevada or Las Vegas. And then again, look at what kind of family resource centers or support programs are in those communities, and then kind of start from there, networking and building relationships. And again, see how you folks can collaborate and help each other. I hope I answered that question. Thank you for the question. It was a good one.
I know that we've gone to a lot of these webinars ourselves and engaged with other networks on the continent that serve installations. And I think that one thing that we have learned is how important it is to have their voice, the planning. So, if you can find someone to be on your, for example, parent advisory committee, right, who brings that voice to the conversation, who can share that lens, that perspective, and help to be a cultural broker, so to speak. I think that that's really helpful.
I just saw your follow-up comment. There's assumptions, generalizations that Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders don't need family support as they're all about ohana and family. I agree. I think there is that assumption, but I think our job as family community workers is to, I like to call it like ninja. So you're giving them the stuff without knowing that they're receiving that stuff, right? So you're not going to outreach to them and say, hey, I think you would benefit from this program, but more so creating events and opportunities and spaces where they would come anyway. And then when they're there, then you can be like, hey, by the way, we have this awesome thing happening, or another really good way that things travel, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this, is word of mouth. So once you have one family engaged and you serve them well, and they show amazing outcomes, I almost guarantee you they're going to share that with somebody else, and especially that somebody else who they recognize themselves as a community member may benefit from this service. So it's not you as a worker kind of saying like, hey, I think you would benefit from this, but more so it's coming from a peer of theirs. So that's another kind of approach and strategy that I think I would work.
I think that's just Blanche Pope, right? She turned it into a really fun event that everybody wanted to be there for, and then she brought the community resources there. And so it wasn't like they were being referred or even asking, they were just getting to know these organizations in a very casual way. Trust kapua, there again is that relational trust piece. So yeah, I think that's a great example.
Tell Kat and Kakuna, by how you answered that question, how embedded the standards are in your work. Like you literally could have been reading out of the standards manual. Like those are like amazing examples of family centeredness and diversity, equity, inclusion, and community strengthening, like just such concrete. And I think those also obviously for the Indigenous Hawaii population, but also in general, as you're outreaching to communities, is finding out, learning about them. And the Casey Family Community Opportunity Map is an excellent tool. So yeah, excellent advice. We had just a couple other questions before we close. One of the questions is, why did your network initially adopt the standards?
Why did we initially? Well, honestly, in the beginning, when I was attending all of these webinars, I was very curious about the standards that they kept mentioning. And that was something that I wanted to take a look at. I had already seen in the Department of Education a lack of understanding around quality family engagement. And so I knew if we were going to have this conversation, we all had to be on the same page. And then, with Kakuna and Blueprint for Change and everything that they were already doing, it just seemed to fit so nicely together. And we say this knowing that here again, we try very hard to stay culturally relevant, right? So it was important that we all take that training together, and including the perspective of Native Hawaiians in this. Is this going to be something that is relevant and applicable in Hawaii as well? And so it was important the group decided that a good fit for our state and would help to guide us to having that shared understanding.
Yes. And I'm a social worker by training. So the 5 protective factors, and my focus was children and families. So the 5 protective factors were already a part of my understanding in general. So when this came across, I'm like, wow, like Kat said, it just was a really nice fit to enhance and support the work that we were already doing, giving us really a common language. Julie mentioned that, Kat mentioned that, I think I mentioned it at some point too, that it gives us this common language across all family, not only family resource centers, but family serving programs and organizations who may not be a full-blown family resource center, but still work with families. And I think the 5 protective factors is a huge tool for us in the family support field that really helps us to frame our work with families. Of course, them informing us where they're at and how we can best support them. But having a framework and guideline from which to operate from, the 5 protective factors is just super helpful in um, helping the work be of quality.
I think we're a good combination. Kuna is a social worker by trade, and I'm an educator by trade. So I believe very much in education and training. So yes, put those two things together. The recipe for success.
And Barbie Lay put a comment in the chat, and it actually relates to one of the other questions that I was going to ask. Just I know you're working on so much data collection and learning more formally the impact and next steps, but just even anecdotally, have you seen benefits in the family resource centers and in the neighborhood places that the standards have made?
I know we've seen huge benefits in our school-based family resource centers. Family engagement used to look like family involvement, where it was the sit and get, or the spaghetti dinner, or bingo night, or and really just understanding what engagement might look like, and how important it is, if you really want to tie family engagement to student success, that you focus on strengthening the family with those 5 protective factors. So I know that the programming they're bringing in now and the concrete supports is all because of their training.
And for us, Blueprint for Change in the neighborhood places, I'm going to take it down to the technicalities of it, but really our contracts with the state really spell out what it is that we're being asked to do. And a huge chunk of that is making sure the 5 protective factors are being looked at, and all the goals that the families are creating are based off of the 5 protective factors. So our neighborhood places were really already doing a lot of this work, but what it did, as I mentioned earlier, is it enhanced it. It gave them more teeth, I guess you could say, to really dig into the work and really take a look at the work that they were already doing, and kind of basing an assessment off of that. So huge changes, I think, are coming and continue to come. All of our neighborhood places are very, very different. All the communities they're in are very, very different. So the way they approach the standards and the way they use the standards, of course, are very, very different. So, but I can say generally across the board that they have definitely enhanced and supported the work that all neighborhood places were already doing. Good question.
I think in family engagement, we always have to acknowledge that there's always room for growth in our practice. And having the standards and the implementation tools really helps us to take a closer look at where we are excelling and where we have room for growth, and helps us to focus our efforts. I think we can get really wrapped up in the day-to-day when we're working for and with families. And it's important that we take that pause and take a look at that data, and then really let that guide us in what we need to do.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, thank you again so much, Kat and Kakuna. We are so grateful that you have taken this opportunity to present, and I know our participants have found it very valuable as well, as will all to access it on the recording moving forward. So you're forever in our Webinar Wednesday library, and thank you again so much. And thank you to our participants for joining us for today's webinar. As a reminder, that brief evaluation will appear on your screen when you exit the webinar today. We greatly appreciate your feedback again on that evaluation. It really does help inform future webinars and the development of those. So thank you, and we hope you have a lovely webinar, lovely Wednesday, rest of your day today. Mahalo.
Mahalo.